Sometimes I've heard even brothers and sisters develop certain affections. Prominent families often forget a simple truth. Knowledge is power.
Power is power.
He has a sword, the power of life and death.
But if it's swordsmen who rule, why do we pretend kings hold all the power? When Ned Stark lost his head, who was truly responsible? Joffrey, the executioner, or something else? Power resides where men believe it resides.
Power is everything in the world of Game of Thrones. Every decision, betrayal, and war boils down to one thing: who has it, who wants it, and what they're willing to do to keep it. But what is power, really? Is it control over armies, influence over people, or is it something more elusive, something intangible? The show gives us no shortage of answers, but each one seems to raise even more questions. One thing is clear: power isn't as simple as sitting on the Iron Throne. Plenty of characters who grab power find themselves destroyed by it. Others who seem powerless somehow find ways to shape the world around them. This complexity is what makes the philosophy of power in Game of Thrones so fascinating. It's not just about strength or cunning. It's about perception, loyalty, fear, and even knowledge. What makes power in Westeros so interesting is that it doesn't follow a single set of rules. A character can be powerful one moment and utterly vulnerable the next. The only constant is that power comes at a cost, whether it's betrayal, death, or losing yourself in the pursuit of it. That's why it's worth digging deeper into how power operates in the series and what it tells us about human nature. In this video, we're going to break it all down. We'll explore what power is, how it's used, and why it often fails. From the illusion of power to the legacy it leaves behind, we'll look at how Game of Thrones reveals the many faces of power and the brutal price it demands. Power in Game of Thrones isn't just hard to get, it's even harder to keep. No matter how strong or smart a character is, their power is always fragile. Look at Ned Stark. He was honorable, respected, and loved by his people, but his refusal to play the game cost him his life. He had power in the north, but in King's Landing, it meant nothing. His downfall shows how quickly power can disappear when you're out of your element. Cersei Lannister is another example. She fought tooth and nail to seize power, but her reign was constantly under threat. The High Sparrow nearly destroyed her, proving that even the most ruthless leader can be brought down by forces they don't anticipate. Power in Westeros isn't just about what you can control, it's about what you can't. Even Daenerys Targaryen, with her dragons and armies, learned this lesson the hard way. She thought her power was unshakable, but her failure to win over the people of Westeros made her vulnerable. When she burned King's Landing, it wasn't just the city that fell, it was her entire claim to the throne. Her story shows how power without support is like a castle built on sand. The fragility of power ties back to its illusion. If people believe you're powerful, you are, but the moment the belief wavers, everything falls apart. That's why power in Game of Thrones is so dangerous. It's never truly yours, it's only borrowed, and it can be taken away at any moment. When it comes to power, there's always a question: is it better to be feared or loved? Tywin Lannister would argue for fear. He ruled his family and the realm with an iron fist, and no one dared to cross him. He believed fear kept people in line, and for the most part it worked. But was it sustainable? His death left his family in chaos, because fear doesn't inspire loyalty. It inspires obedience, and obedience dies with the leader. Now look at Jon Snow. Jon doesn't want power, but people follow him anyway, because they trust and respect him. He doesn't use fear to lead. He uses love and loyalty. His men follow him into impossible battles because they believe in him, not because they're afraid of him. That's the difference. Fear can get you power, but love can keep it. Still, love isn't without its risks. Love makes you vulnerable. Jon's love for his family, and even for Daenerys, put him in impossible situations. If you lead through love, people will expect you to do the right thing, even when it costs you everything. It's harder to maintain, and requires sacrifices most leaders aren't willing to make. Fear and love both have their limits, and neither is a perfect solution. But together, they reveal something crucial about power in Game of Thrones. It's never just one thing. The best leaders, like Jon or even Tyrion, understand when to use fear and when to inspire love. It's a balancing act, and very few characters get it right. Power in Game of Thrones is often a trick. Varys said it best: power resides where men believe it resides. That's a chilling idea, because it means power isn't real. It's all in people's heads. If enough people believe you're powerful, you are. If they stop believing, you're finished. It's why Robert Baratheon could rule, despite being a lazy drunk. People thought he was powerful, so they followed him. But what happens when people stop believing? That's when the illusion shatters. Look at Joffrey Baratheon. On paper, he had everything. A crown, armies, and the Lannisters backing him. But no one truly respected him. He ruled through fear, but that only works until people decide they've had enough. When he died, there was no real power vacuum, because everyone had already written him off as a joke. Then there's someone like Marjorie Tyrell. She didn't have armies or dragons, but she understood that power is about influence. She made people love her, which gave her power over them. Even Cersei, who played the game better than almost anyone, knew Marjorie was a threat. Why? Because people believed in her. That's the secret to power in Westeros. It's not about what you have. It's about what people think you have. This idea of illusion sets the stage for everything else in the series. Once you understand that power is perception, you can see why some characters succeed while others fail. It's not always about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about knowing how to make people believe in you. Can power coexist with morality, or does one always corrupt the other? This is one of the biggest questions in Game of Thrones, and the answer seems to vary depending on who you're looking at. Daenerys Targaryen is a perfect example. She starts her journey with noble ideals, freeing slaves, fighting for justice, and breaking the wheel. But as her power grows, so does her ruthlessness. By the end, her morality is almost unrecognizable, consumed by her need to impose her vision on the world. Contrast that with Brienne of Tarth. Brienne is arguably one of the most moral characters in the series. She sticks to her vows, protects the innocent, and refuses to compromise her values, even when it costs her dearly. But her morality limits her power. She's never a ruler or a player in the game, because her sense of honor makes her predictable. People like Cersei know exactly what she'd do, and that makes her easy to outmaneuver. Then there's someone like Tyrion Lannister, who operates in the gray area between morality and pragmatism. Tyrion tries to do the right thing, but he's also willing to make compromises to survive. His time as Hand of the King shows how difficult it is to balance morality with the harsh realities of power. He saves King's Landing from Stannis, but does so by unleashing wildfire, an act that kills countless innocent people. Is he a hero or a villain? In Westeros, the line is always blurred. This section ties back to the earlier idea of perception. In Game of Thrones, morality doesn't always align with how people perceive power. A character like Daenerys can claim moral superiority, but if her actions alienate people, her power crumbles. Meanwhile, someone like Cersei, who abandons morality entirely, can cling to power for a while, but at a devastating personal cost. The show asks us to question whether power is worth pursuing, if it means losing your soul in the process. If there's one lesson Game of Thrones drives home, it's that knowledge is power. This idea is embodied by characters like Tyrion, Varys, and Littlefinger, who survive not through brute strength, but through their understanding of people and events. Varys calls himself the Spider for a reason. He weaves a web of secrets that allows him to manipulate everyone around him. He may not sit on the Iron Throne, but his influence is felt in every corner of Westeros. Littlefinger takes this a step further. He doesn't just gather knowledge, he weaponizes it. From his manipulation of Lysa Arryn to his role in starting the War of the Five Kings, Littlefinger proves that knowing the right secret at the right time can change the course of history. His downfall comes, not because he lacks knowledge, but because he underestimates the people around him, particularly Sansa Stark. Even in a world where knowledge is power, overconfidence can still be your undoing. Tyrion's story is perhaps the most compelling example of how knowledge shapes power. He's constantly underestimated because of his size and his drinking, but his intelligence makes him indispensable. Whether it's outsmarting Stannis' fleet with wildfire or navigating the treacherous waters of Daenerys' court, Tyrion proves time and again that brains can beat brawn. But his failures, like trusting his siblings too much, show that even the smartest players can falter when they let emotions cloud their judgment. This section connects to the fragility of power discussed earlier. Knowledge can make you powerful, but it doesn't make you invincible. Varys and Littlefinger both meet brutal ends because they overplay their hands. Tyrion, on the other hand, learns from his mistakes, which allows him to survive. In Westeros, knowledge is a double-edged sword. It can elevate you, but it can also destroy you if you're not careful. Power in Game of Thrones is never what it seems. It's an illusion, a balancing act, and a double-edged sword. It can be built on fear or love, knowledge or morality, but no matter how it's wielded, it always comes at a cost. As we've seen, the pursuit of power consumes everyone who chases it, leaving destruction in its wake. But the series also teaches us something deeper. Power isn't just about thrones and crowns, it's about people. It's about the relationships you build, the loyalty you inspire, and the impact you leave behind. For every Tywin or Cersei who dies, bitter and alone, there's a Brienne or a Jon who finds strength in something more lasting than power, honor, and connection. At its core, Game of Thrones forces us to ask tough questions about power. Is it worth sacrificing everything for? Can it ever truly be yours, or is it always borrowed? And in the end, does it even matter? The show doesn't give us easy answers, but maybe that's the point. Power, like life, is messy, unpredictable, and always slipping through your fingers. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to see more videos. If you liked the video, please tell me why. If you didn't, also tell me why. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.